I'm so excited. I'm Beth Copeland, and I'm so excited for the opportunity and the privilege to be here with Pastor Fred Musser, the founding pastor of Tabernacle International Church. And we are here for the opportunity to actually spend some time learning more about you and from the beginning, from 50 years ago, as we're here tonight celebrating the 50th anniversary, the gala anniversary for the church. And I'm so excited to be with you, Pastor Fred, today.
It's an exciting time, isn't it?
Yes, totally. 50 years. It's totally exciting. One of the first things that I would like more insight from you is at 40 years old, I read that is when you started this ministry.
That's
oh my
right.
God, most people by 40 are not looking to start a new business, a new career, and especially a church. And you're the founding leader, pastor. Tell me what you were thinking then. Tell me about your calling and how you knew you were already in ministry, but how did you know that was what was next?
Well, I had been pastoring for years, 20 years before that, and they were in denominational situations where you couldn't have anything much to say about where you were going to preach or what you were going to do. You either had a board that could fire you and hire you and do that, or you had something else, and you had time limits and things like that. And I had resigned my church, and I went with Channel 46 700 Club.
Wow.
In fact, Pat Robertson and I had the same birthday.
Oh, wow. How awesome.
And he was 3 years older than me. But anyway, I went there to have a place to be in ministry. And then I knew God was calling me to start a ministry of our own. And but I've never said no to God, as far as I can tell.
That's a good thing.
I would even hesitate if I knew there was something. So I was just saying, well, I want to know for sure. And then when he let me know for sure, and I said, okay.
What was the evidence of that? How were you certain?
Well, back in those days, I thought you still should put out a fleece. But then I learned later, that's an Old Testament thing. But what I did was, there was a lady who she and her husband, I really respected them totally as spiritual leaders to me. And they were older than me, of course. And we were at a meeting, and we attended this particular meeting every month. And we sat at this table, a breakfast table, and we had breakfast at that meeting. And I said, if this lady ever says to me that we should start our own church, then I'll know it's you.
Wow.
And
wow.
A lot of people ask me, and I would say, well, I'm praying about it. And I was. And I said, but if this particular lady ever asks me about starting our own church, well, this Saturday morning in 73 in November, we were sitting at the first Saturday of the month, we were sitting at the breakfast table, and she looked over at me, and she said, when are we going to start our own church?
Amazing. God confirms his word. One of the things I've read and I've experienced as a member, my husband and I, Jerome, have been here for like 18, 19 years. There's been a lot of transition, and I wanted to ask you this question. Did you ever imagine that the church would grow to the impact that it has now?
I don't think I did, because I've never had the idea that I'm going to build something and I'm going to build it big. I'm just going to do what God says to do.
Awesome.
That's all.
Awesome.
I mean, if it would have been 100 or 200 people, it was still, I was just doing what God wanted me to do.
Awesome.
I never thought about anything else.
I'm sorry for your loss, Mother Joan, recently.
Thank you.
And she was instrumental to you
Oh, my goodness.
starting the church.
Joan was so supportive of me. Anything, whatever, I said, well, like when I said, well, we're going to start a church. Okay. Well, when I said we're going to move from Kentucky to Georgia, away from her family, further away from my family, and virtually only knowing a few people in Georgia, and I said, we're going to move to Georgia. God's opened up a path for us to go to Georgia. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she was always totally supportive of
Oh,
me.
so sweet, personable, just very loving is the way that I would define her. So you were born in Ohio
Right, on a dairy farm,
on a dairy farm. I read that.
a rather large dairy farm.
Wow. Family owned?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yes. There were 6 of us children. I was number 5, and 4 boys and 2 girls. So Dad had plenty of help on the farm, and
I'm
Mom
sure.
had plenty of help in the kitchen.
Oh my goodness. So having lived there and then some kind of way you went to school, I think.
I went
you
to
transitioned to Kentucky.
I went to school at Asbury College in Kentucky because a friend of mine had gone there the year before.
Okay.
And so he came back, and I had started a choir in my little church in Easton, Ohio.
Okay.
And a little choir of about 10 or 12 people. And I was the bass section, and I led the choir. That's how small it was. But anyway, I was doing that, and he said, I'm going to have a tent meeting. Will you come and lead the singing and bring the choir? I said, okay. And the first 2 or 3 nights, right away, I went to the altar, and I knew God was calling me to the ministry.
Wow, how amazing. So you were raised in a Christian family, though?
Well, it was a Christian family, but we didn't go to church because of the dairy farm.
Okay.
Well, we had to milk the cows, 7 days a week, and morning and evening. But my dad also owned 2 milk routes where he picked up milk from other farmers.
Whoa.
So after we milked the cows, we couldn't do anything else. We had to go pick up the milk for the farmers, and we didn't get back from Akron with the empty trucks, until noon.
Okay.
So there was no way we could go to church.
Okay, so the church was in the home then. You actually
Well,
studied or
my first 5 years, my mother was a piano player at the church, and my
Okay.
great-grandfather was the pastor. But he
What a
passed
heritage.
away when I was about 2, and then when my baby brother was born, the new pastor moved my mother off of the piano bench.
Okay.
And of course, that hurt her, and she would have gone to church, but I was in church every Sunday until I was 5 or 6 years old.
So,
And then I started riding the truck with my dad and helping on the truck, so every day.
but that's instrumental. I want to note that. Up 5 or 6. So raise them up in the way they instrumental years and raising them up in the way they should go, and they will not depart.
I always believed in God. I always believed in Jesus. I knew the Bible stories. I didn't know much else, but I knew the Bible story. And I really, when I look back now, I see it was God's hand in everything.
Most definitely, most definitely. So you're here in Atlanta, or Georgia rather, Lawrenceville, right?
Right.
Always here. And you started this church, and you got confirmation because you asked God to show you, and the lady spoke it to you. You start this church. What was the most challenging opportunity that faced you and Mother Joan starting the church? You got 4 children by now?
Yeah, we had 4 children by then,
Okay.
yes. The baby was born in 64, so we had all 4 children in 73. And, well, of course, the first thing, I just went to the funeral director, which was Couch in those days, Couch Mason.
Okay.
And because they were friends of mine and family in Chestnut Grove Baptist Church, where I was pastor in Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew them, I knew him, and asked if we could meet in their
Okay.
facility. And we only met one Sunday, and
One Sunday a month?
No, we only met one Sunday in there.
Okay.
And I said to one of the men, I says, that old house down there, which is now next to the post office, which is a welcoming center now for Lawrenceville.
Okay. In downtown Lawrenceville?
Downtown
Yeah,
Lawrenceville.
okay.
I said, that old house has been sitting there empty a long time. Let's just see if we can rent it. And so they asked, and then that week we moved in there.
So you had a following immediately from.
I had about, well, we got a list of it. We'll talk about that. But everybody signed their name. I think about 25 or 30 people.
Wow.
Well, of course, 6 of them was us. But anyway, that was the first ones that met. And most of them stayed. I said, the first day we met, I said, we're starting a church, and this is the name of it, and here's what we're going to do.
Was it Tabernacle from the beginning?
I called it the Full Gospel Baptist Church. Well, I got some flack on that because Baptist people didn't like me using that because that made it sound like they weren't full gospel. So then we dropped the Baptist part. But it was full gospel church, and I say the second Sunday we met, we were meeting in that old house.
Wow.
And that became our meeting house. That was the meeting house for a year. And then I saw a sign out in front of the old theater building, the old Thompson Theater. I didn't have much sense. I didn't have any business sense. All I had was, I'm just doing this. I don't know.
Sounds like you're following the leading of the Holy Spirit.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had people ask me, how do you start a church? I said, I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
I
was going to ask you later for an opportunity is what would be your recommendation or your words of wisdom that you would share with someone that was interested in starting a church, I'm feeling as if they were led to start a church. But you just answered that in a sense.
Well, we've started 5 other churches.
Right.
Yeah. And 4 of them are still going.
Awesome.
And
so you started planting churches.
Yeah, so we planted other churches, yeah.
Awesome.
Monroe, over in the west side, and up in Rome, and down in Macon, down near Macon, Warner Robins. And these were men that I had confidence in, and I ordained them, and I just sent them out, and they just went, and they did it.
Amazing.
And one lady, and then of course a missionary in Africa, and her family. That's all out of this ministry.
Awesome. You mentioned Africa. I'm curious. 50 cultures represented today. Did you even have any inkling that would
never
from back in 73?
I never ever thought. I didn't even think. Didn't even.
What
think
about the
about
diversity that you're experiencing today?
Over 50 nations.
Right here.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, our son.
Because back then, that wasn't as welcoming for. I mean, we already know that still Sunday is the most segregated opportunity. Has been said. But it's remarkable, and it's a pleasure, honestly, to be a part of a church that welcomes everyone, and you feel that love.
We love everyone.
I believe that. I experience it every Sunday, even when I'm here. I still say you had to be conditioned to experience the love of God, truly, to be welcoming for what would come later and what we are experiencing even today. And I love what you said, is that we love everyone.
Well, and we say, and my son has picked it up for me, of course, but and we say it here all the time, as you know, he will say, turn to somebody and say, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I love that, and that is definitely true, and I love that. And speaking of your son, Apostle Fritz, who is now senior pastor, I'm so excited to have Jerome and I, again, have been here for a number of years, and the word of truth is preached continuously, regularly, every Sunday, and I appreciate that. And I know for you to have been able to pass the baton, if you will, over to Apostle Fritz had to be just a moment that was pure delight. I don't know, how would you define that?
When he he called me one day and he said, Daddy, he said, you said that someday I could come home, and he was still finishing up seminary. He said, you said I could come home and join you there. I said, yeah. When do you want to come? He says, right now.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, well, let me at least tell the people about it, So I told him next Sunday he's coming home. So then shortly he came home, and I said, okay, now I had a little trick, I guess you could call it. So what I did is I said, you listen, you watch and listen. Well, he already knew what to do. I took him on hospital visits and personal visits at homes when he was a little fella. In fact, he would be walking behind me in the hospital hall, and I'd look back, and he was trying to step in my footprints. He was, my foot, and his legs weren't as long, but he was reaching out so he could step right where I did. So anyway,
so we have to, word of wisdom, watch where you walk, because they're going to follow that path. Is that?
He literally followed in my footsteps.
Oh, my.
And his heart is the same as mine.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the same spirit, and I don't ever want that spirit to change. We want to, that same spirit is here, whether him or I. Well, here's what I did. I wouldn't tell the people who was going to be preaching Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. So they had no idea. And so somebody asked me why. I said, well, I don't want people saying, well, I would rather hear the old man, or I'd rather hear the kid, and I didn't want them choosing.
Wisdom.
They couldn't choose between us, because they had to hear both of us. If they were there, they were going to hear whoever was up. And they never, one man said, now I know which one of you's going to preach. I said, how? He says, whichever one's got the portfolio. I said, yeah, but you still don't know until they get up to walk up there with it,
Wonderful.
And so we did that for a while.
So how did you know, and was it easy to transition when he took over as senior pastor? How did you know? I mean, you had started in 1973, 1993 is when he took the reins. How did you know it was time for him to become the senior pastor?
Well, it's interesting that I was pastor 20 years. Now he's been pastor 30 years. The division of the time is interesting. I had no idea. I didn't even know I was 40 when I started the church. I mean, I those things, I didn't think about that. Yeah. But anyway, I finally felt that people were confident with either one of us in the pulpit. So now it could be just basically him.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember what Sunday morning it was. I don't keep track of all that stuff. God keeps track of that. I don't. And so one Sunday, he didn't even know it. And I had preached the message, and I finished with the message, and I referred to Elijah and Elisha when Elijah threw his cloak down. And I wasn't trying to be dramatic or anything. I'm not that way. You know me. I'm plain and simple. But what I did was I announced it to the people. I took off my coat and I dropped it at his feet. And
I wish you had prepared me for that, because I'm a very emotional person. Oh my
he
God.
picked it up and threw it over his shoulders. Threw it around.
Unplanned. No performance.
He didn't know. I didn't even know I was going to do it. I just did it.
I could cry right now, okay? So I'm going to try to refrain myself. But that is God, and also that's love. Knowing when it's time.
And I was confident, and I was right. He's done so much more for this. See, I'm a visionary. I like to get things started and let somebody else finish. I mean, I'm just that way. I have, it's not that I have the courage, I have the lack of sense, I guess. I'll jump in and do something new. Let's do it. If you feel right about it, I feel good about it. God directs the whole thing.
And what I recognize, though, is true leadership. When we can know that God had given you the wisdom, the vision to start it, But when we can prepare someone else to follow in our footsteps and ready them for it, and then at that appropriate time to transfer, and I love the mantle passing.
See, that was in my mind from the very beginning as to, and I was hoping I could pass it on to him. But when he went off to college, he didn't go to study for the ministry.
I know. I've heard him talk about that. Isn't that something? He was in, what, retail clothing?
Retail. They wanted to make him a buyer at Macy's. So they wanted to make him a buyer. And so because of my wife's brother being president of a Methodist college in Kentucky, and he was only 5 years younger than me, but he had great ministry there. And so I said, well, why don't you go to school? Go, Uncle JB, go on up there and go to school, you know. And he had no idea of going into ministry.
Amazing.
But when he got there, the pastors of that area knew me, and they knew his uncle. So he went to this church, and they picked him up right away as a youth pastor.
I love it.
And then it went from there.
Oh, I have to say my phrase. God has a plan, and he was a part of it. And look at him today. You know,
he put it together just like the pieces in a puzzle. God put it all together. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything.
But that's it right there. But you did something. You were obedient.
Just follow the path.
Oh my gosh. Here we are. You know, 50 years later, 20 years under your leadership, then 30 now under Apostle Fritz. And I want to ask you, what is the most change that you've seen over those 50 years in the way of how the church is received and how the church operates today? And TIC has maintained, from my perspective, just according to the truth and aligned with the truth the whole while that I've been a part.
Well, I don't know that I see a change. What I've seen is, from the very beginning, I used to say our only law is love, and our only creed is Christ. We don't have a creed. We don't have law. You know, and it's based on that. It's based on honesty and integrity, and no fooling around about that. Nothing flamboyant. As you know, I'm known around here as Pawpaw.
Yeah.
And a lot of people call me Fred.
Yeah.
See, I would never allow people to call me Reverend.
Yeah.
I said there's only one Reverend.
Yeah.
They call me brother.
Yeah.
I mean, that was all right, but we're you, you're us. We're just one. We're one in Christ. I mean, if you're one, you're one. You're not separated. And that's,
you are really going to make me go to tears in a minute here.
I mean, that's just the way that's the way it is. That's the only way I see it. I only see it through God's eyes.
And that's the way we're supposed to see it. What did you see as an opportunity today that you would say to Apostle Fritz in going forth to experience another 25, 50 years? What do you think is important that you would just want to say to him as you celebrate the anniversary, but he's celebrating as well? What would you say to him? What would you lend to him in words of encouragement, wisdom?
Still stick to the same formula. God has it all figured out. Love everybody. Teach them to be loved and be patient with each other. Don't, and love and patience and understanding and preferring others before yourself. I mentioned to someone just last week, and my son followed the path with my leading way back 60 years ago in the ministry. In my early ministry, you had church suppers, all right? What usually happens just about every church supper? The preacher's the first one in line. And he's the first one to stack his plate. You won't ever see my son or I at the head of the line.
Wow.
We will not go through the line until the others have been through.
Oh, what?
We prefer everybody else to yourself.
And I just experienced that. We had a church picnic a few weeks ago, and he was last to eat. In fact, he hadn't eaten by the time I think that I had even left. There were people, a flood of people, and you would think that wanting to honor him, he would go first, but no, it's servant leadership that you all practice here.
We're the shepherd. You make sure the sheep are taken care of before yourself.
Wow.
I mean,
that's truth. It's written, and you walk it out here for us.
I take it literally. I
think he meant for all of us too.
Well, hopefully it rubs off and everybody does.
Because we need a leader that shows that.
Well, I think it was St. Francis that said this. I'm not sure, but he said, everywhere you go, preach, and sometimes use words.
I've heard Mother Teresa. I've heard of different ones, but yeah, I agree. Yeah,
it's your life that does it. Look, what good does it do for someone to stand up and tell everybody how to live if they don't live it themselves?
I mean, the truth of Matthew 5:16 is, let your light so shine before men that others will see our good works, but God will receive the glory. That's what you're lived here. What's next
more
for you?
people are led to the Lord by the testimony of friends than they are the preaching.
I agree. The opportunity for what's next for you. I know you've all along been working in the church, but before we started and we were chatting, I just want to get this out there. And
Well, I have one book, but it was not. It didn't have the code, so it couldn't be sold in bookstores. So somebody did it for me, and I was supposed to sell it. I think I gave most of them away. And so I want to take that book on prayer, but I'm finishing up now. I'm really working hard to finish this book. My Yoke is Easy.
Yeah.
And what I hope to do with it is to have the book would be My Yoke is Easy on one side, and then you flip it over and start the other way, and it'll be the book on prayer. And so anyway, it'd be two books in one. But the main thing, I want to get out to people a book that will show them that living a Christian life is not difficult. You just don't have to work at it. And if you're working at it, you're not doing what needs to be done, witnessing to people. When I say witnessing, I don't mean buttonhole them and cornering them somewhere and trying to load the scripture on them. I mean show them how to live.
Excellent.
So if I can show people how to live with this book, and they can show people how to live by their life, that's my goal now.
Practical application is essential, and that's what I hear.
If I were one of the pigs, I would be practical pig.
I love it. I really am excited about your being 90. You hit a milestone
90?
in March, 90 years old.
I was 90 in March, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I see you drive to church. I don't live too far from here, so sometimes I see you driving to church, still driving, still actively involved. Now you're writing books. We have been so privileged and honored as a church family to experience the love and the legacy now, that even is coming down the line. You have several children. We talked about Apostle. But before we close, I wanted you to mention there are others of your children that are still alive, and then even Pastor Candy working in the church.
Well, Pastor Candy with the children, I mean, she has done, she's done a remarkable job.
It's such a sweet spirit.
She is.
Just beautiful.
And Pam taught when we used to have the Sunday school, but then we got too large to have Sunday school, so we had children's church and adult church. And she's done all of that in the transition, but Pam taught Sunday school for years until we made that transition. That's our oldest daughter.
Okay.
They're all of them accepted Christ young. The younger ones coming along now are, I believe there's one of my great-grandchildren I won't say any more of that, but
Okay.
I believe there's a great-grandchild that's
Gonna
going
follow?
to follow along.
What a rich heritage.
If so,
Yeah.
God's got the timing. It's all set.
Oh yeah, but you're speaking it.
I am.
And is essential, and I'm sure you're praying in that regard.
And I will not try to cause it or manipulate it, but I pray and I give it to God. He's taken it so far. He's done this whole thing. I haven't, and I'm not trying to sound humble. You know, I've told people, I want to be an humble man, but I don't want to go through what you have to go through to be humble. I don't want to be humiliated. So I don't really, how could you consider yourself humble? You know, we used to say in college, I wrote a book on humility and how I obtained it, or you can be humble too in 10 easy lessons. Got a picture of me on every other page. We used to kid about that, and I understand. Paul, early in his ministry, he said, I'm numbered among the apostles.
Yeah. That's the way.
I'm one of the apostles. What did he say? What was the last statement he said?
He said,
I'm the chiefest of sinners.
Yes, less than the least. And one thing that I have to say to you is you said, I'm not walking around here trying to say I'm humble, but you walk in humility. And humility is before honor. And that's why this time was set aside to honor you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
You're such a wonderful person.
Thank you. And thank you for your love and support all down through the years. And it's always so good to look out, see you or your husband out in the yard over there. When I go by, we wave. And it's just nice. It's nice to know we have such beautiful friends like you.
Oh, praise God. And likewise. So thank you so much. You're going to make me cry before this is over, and I'm being really good. I've recognized throughout the body of Christ the love that we experience in this congregation here at Tabernacle International Church. It flows from you all the way down to pastor to throughout the church.
I would give my life for anyone in here. And I believe they do this same for me.
Oh my God. God bless you.
I mean that. I mean that totally.
I feel it. I feel you mean it. I think we're going to end up blabbering up here if we don't close this out soon.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for this time.
Thank you.
And thank you for the service. Thank you for your service
Thank you.
and being obedient to God. May we follow the example that you set before us.
And may I continue to follow him.
And may we follow you as you follow Christ. Thank
Amen.
you.